Good afternoon. My name is Austin Reinhardt, and I will be speaking to you today regarding the ethical treatment of animals as discussed by Peter Singer in his book, Practical Ethics. In my presentation, I will focus specifically on his conclusions about the consumption of animals and the ethics behind such consumption, a possible rejection of his conclusions, and a rebuttal of the rejection based on other claims and conclusions drawn by Singer in his text. Peter Singer, in his book Practical Ethics, addresses the ethical issues and concerns surrounding consuming animals for food. In our culture today, more awareness has been brought to the practices and the methods surrounding the growth and processes behind what we eat and how it is grown or raised. Therefore, this subject is on the minds of many. In the previous chapters of the book, Singer concludes that we should give all sentient beings, meaning those that can feel pain, equal consideration of interest regardless of their species, meaning that we should consider the interest of a human and one of a non-human equally in order to make ethical decisions. On the topic of the consumption of animals, Singer gives us several reasons why we shouldn't eat meat. 3. Number 1, meat is not necessary for good health or longevity. We can simply eat plants, vegetables, those types of things to sustain ourselves. Meat, therefore, is not necessary. The second, only about 1/4 of the nutritional value, and in some sense, of nearly 1/10 of the value of grains used to feed the animals remains after the consumption of meat by humans. Therefore, this means that the process that we use currently, where only 1/4 of the nutritional value of the grains is left, therefore in itself is not a good process. We're losing nutritional value by eating the meat. So that's one conclusion he reaches. And the final and the third, mass production of animals leads to inhumane environments for the animals that they're raised in. So this is the factory farming method that Singer will focus on in this chapter, and that I'll mainly focus on as well. Although the first two reasons Singer gives are great, they don't necessarily prohibit us from consuming animals, nor do they label such consumption as unethical. But the third reason is where Singer himself draws the line. These animals are suffering. Therefore, we should care and take a vested interest in those animals that are on these factory farms and that are living in such conditions that are causing suffering unto themselves. Regardless of the vivid scene that he paints of unethical treatment and suffering and pain based on the animal's living conditions, Singer concludes that in some situations it would be okay to consume meat unless we absolutely knew that the meat we consume was not raised on a factory farm and that it was raised in the most humane way possible. Unless we know this for sure, it seems unethical to consume such meat. This argument seems sound, but I would like to present to you one rebuttal against Singer's conclusion that possibly could be drawn from someone outside of the text. After I have made such an argument, I will refer back to the text and back to some of Singer's conclusions to show why this argument carries a little weight regardless of the points it attempts to make. If Singer claims that factory farm animals being raised the way they are is unethical, I'll raise one question. How could these animals desire something they have never had, and how can we classify their experiences as suffering? These animals have spent their whole lives in situations that Singer describes about the factory farm. He claims that these animals are experiencing extreme suffering. A possible rejection could be that these animals do not know happiness in the sense that we make it out to be, or they do not know suffering as we make it out to be. Their lives are as they know it and nothing else. Therefore, how can we say they are suffering when they know no happiness? I must point out that this argument is not one that I personally am making, but it is a possible argument that could be made by someone else. Taking what we have learned from Singer, we should refer back to equal consideration of interest when rejecting this possible argument. We should consider the interest of all beings equally, meaning that we should give the same weight to the interest of farm animals as we do humans. Certainly, it is in the best interest of the animals to not be raised in such a way. Therefore, we have to take that into consideration and deem such treatment of these animals as unethical simply because they are an animal and not a human, for we know that we would conclude that a person who has lived in a state of suffering their whole life deserves better than this. In this brief presentation, I have given Singer's position regarding the consumption of animals as food, a possible argument against Singer's conclusions. Then I took information gathered from Singer's text and applied it back to this argument as a possible rebuttal. Thank you.